welcome to our science lesson. Now we're going to continue on with our topic of states of matter, and today we're going to be looking at wonderful water. Now our aims, I can explore how water changes state, and our success criteria, so what I want to see from you guys is I want you to identify the different states that water can be in. I can identify the temperatures at which water changes state, and I can identify and observe the processes that cause the water to change state. So now, straight away, first task. Water can be in one of three states. We know that it can be in solid, it can be in liquid, or it can be in gas. So now on Teams, I have uploaded worksheet 1, and it should look just like this. So you've got 2 pages in this, and you've got 6 questions, along with 8 answers. So now I want you to match these answers to the questions, and throughout our lesson today we're going to go through and then you can see whether you got them right. So straight away complete this and then come back to me once you've done, and then we can continue on with our lesson. Okay, pause. Okay, so let's have a look. So exploring the processes. So well, let's find out more about how water changes state, the processes that cause its change, and the temperatures at which it changes. So up here we've got our liquid, we've got just water, the ocean, the sea, what we drink. Here we've got ice, so that is obviously frozen water, that is our solid. And then here we've got our bubbles of water, so when water boils, maybe in a kettle or on a hob, when we're cooking pasta or rice, we have got our bubbles of water, and that is a gas. So firstly, from our gas, this is called evaporation. And this is when water turns into water vapour. So that's a liquid turning into a gas. And evaporation happens really easily when water reaches its boiling point of 100 degrees Celsius. So when we boil water like in a kettle, the water must get to 100 degrees Celsius for it to evaporate and start boiling. However, evaporation can happen more slowly at much lower temperatures. For example, when water in a puddle warms up, water from the surface of the puddle slowly changes into water vapour. So this is something that we see. We might not notice it, but we see it all the time. So maybe when it just starts to rain outside and there's a puddle outside in the streets, and throughout the day, when the sun's on it, throughout the day, that water will disappear. And that is called evaporation. And even now, when it's snowing, this is a perfect time to explore our processes. So the ice or the snow outside is the solid. It then eventually it will melt and turn into water, and after that it will then evaporate into the gas. And then after that we've got condensation. So this is almost the opposite, but this is when water vapour is cooled down and turns to water, a gas turning into a liquid. And you can see that condensation has happened when you see droplets on water on a window or a mirror in a warm room. And the water vapour in the air has been cooled by touching the cold surface, and this causes it to change to water. So for my example would be if I boiled my kettle right next to my window, the water vapour would be on my window, wouldn't it? Lots of droplets. Or if I'm cooking in my kitchen and I open my window, it gets really, really hot. I get water vapour all over my window. Next we have freezing. So freezing occurs when the water is made very cold. When water reaches 0 degrees Celsius, it turns to ice. So freezing is a liquid turning into a solid. So we know that if we put an ice tray, if we put some water in there in squares, we put it into the freezer, and as soon as that water then reaches 0 degrees, it would turn to ice. Or even when it's outside, when it's rained, and overnight it is it's 0 degrees or less, it will then freeze and it will be icy, won't it? And then we've got melting. I'm sure that looking at this picture, I'm sure many of us have had this before. Melting occurs when ice warms up and changes to water. So a solid changing to a liquid. That's at temperatures above 0 degrees Celsius, ice will melt. So if we have an ice cream and the temperature outside is more than 0 degrees Celsius, you've got to eat that ice cream quite quick, otherwise it will melt all over your hands. Or again, even just looking outside when it's snowy, if the temperature is above 0 degrees Celsius, or it's icy outside, it will melt, won't it? And it'll turn into water. So now this is just a diagram explaining what happens. So if this is going to the right hand side, we've got melting and then evaporation. So if the temperature is above 0 degrees Celsius, the ice will turn into a liquid. And again, if the temperature is still above 0 degrees Celsius, it will then evaporate into water vapor. However, if it is water vapor and it is below 0 degrees Celsius, the water vapor will condense, or condensation, into our liquid. And then if it's still below 0 degrees Celsius, it will then freeze into ice. So water changes state as a result of these processes. So now, this is a little bit of an activity that I think that you guys can do at home. All you need is some ice from your freezer, so some ice cubes, and just some salt. That is all that you need. So in this first activity, you will place 2 or 3 ice cubes on some cling film, stretched over a container of warm water. So it doesn't have to be boiling water, just some nice warm water. And what do you see in the container? What can you observe on the cling film? And what processes are occurring? So I want you to do this investigation and just write a few sentences answering these 3 questions. Once you have done that, you can then, so I want you to work with an adult for this activity, so someone at home, and I want you to boil a kettle. And I want you to watch water vapour form as it boils. So how can this gas be turned back into a liquid? Can you reverse this change? What can you see? Which processes have you observed? And how has the temperature caused these processes? So have a go and boil your kettle with an adult and just write a few sentences about what you have noticed. And then next, salt and ice. So I want you to, so I know it says beakers, you could just put these in 2 cups. And I want you to, on one of the ice cubes, put a teaspoon of salt. And I want you to just observe what happens over a few minutes. As well, you can use a thermometer to observe how the temperature in the beakers changes. You don't have to do that if you don't have one. But again, what do you notice happening to the 2 ice cubes? What process is occurring? And what happened to the temperature in the different glasses? And you might not be able to answer that, but you might be able to have quite a good guess about what happens. So we're going to want a few sentences describing what has happened with that. Okay, so with these 3 that I've just explained, have a few sentences and remember to take some pictures so I can see. I'd like to see most of us be able to do it because all we need is some salt and some ice and maybe even some cling film. That's all that we need for these activities. I will see you in the next one.